Welcome to another episode of TUB, You Beautiful Beings. We have an incredible guest today. Today we'll be learning about transforming global consciousness with Ankush K Jain, and this will be a masterclass on being. So hang tight. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. We've got another amazing masterclass that we're putting on today, and joining us in studio is Ankush Jain, and then we also have Rosa Latham here to do a little housekeeping. You mentioned earlier before we started that you have some tickets available for the event.
Yeah, so just wanted to make everyone aware who's tuning in or watching the replay of this that we've created some installment tickets. So, and actually it was Ankush who gave the idea for this. So thank you, Ankush. If someone wants to put down a £50 deposit, a non-refundable deposit, you can do so between now and Christmas, so the 25th of December, and then pay off the remainder of the ticket in installments after Christmas of 125. So that's the first one. And the second one is that we have Bring a Buddy ticket. So you can bring a friend, and when you buy 2 tickets at the same time, it reduces the price of the ticket. So I think it's for about £700 instead of the usual price of £375 each. So I just wanted to share that to make people aware.
Amazing. Anything else we need to know before we dive into this amazing class?
I think that covers the top of it, and I'll certainly I'll share all the links at the bottom after the masterclass so people can click through, take a look at the website that is now up and running, tu/be/24, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about the charity that we're donating the money towards. But please do share your insights and any questions as we're going along, because I'll be putting them up across the bottom.
That's perfect. And we are doing the Birmingham Children's Hospital with the cochlear implants will be the donations that we're making. And so all of the proceeds will go toward that charity. So you're not just purchasing a ticket for an event. This will be life-changing, but it's going to change the lives of kids who will be hearing for the first time in their lives. So Be Here is the slogan that we're using. BHEAR. Be Here, of course, BHERE, right? We got to clarify all this.
Yeah.
And so you're really making a difference in the world. I appreciate you being on. We'll excuse Rose to the back room here, so I'm going to remove you from the forefront.
Can I just check it was streaming in all the Facebook groups as well at this point? Is that right?
It is. Yep, it's in both groups. It's also on YouTube, and we'll be able to upload it later as well. Fantastic. So awesome. So today, let me go ahead and do this. And today we're going to discover how to shift your perception and interact with the world in a more conscious and enlightening way. This session is not just about personal growth. It's about contributing to a global change in consciousness. Ankush Jain is a distinguished life and business coach known for his ability to change the consciousness of the planet one person at a time. As the founder of Powerful Men's Immersions and the AJC Coaching Career School and author of Sweet Sharing, Rediscovering the Real You, Ankush brings a unique blend of simplicity and depth to his teachings, and we're lucky enough to have him on the show today. Ankush, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Nick. It's great to be here.
You're welcome. Now, this is going to be your platform. It'll be interactive, so you'll see conversations come across the board. You're welcome to tackle any of those, and I'll be right alongside you as we go through this. And before we do dive into this, I'd like to hear, when we talk about being, what does that mean?
To me, being is a really simple, straightforward thing, right? It's not a complicated concept, although it can seem like that. But for me, it's if I'm angry right now, then what I'm being is being angry, right? It's very simple. Just you substitute the word or you add the word being in front of whatever state you're in the moment. So I can be angry, or I can be happy, I can be loving, I can be kind, I can be graceful. These are all different states of being. And one of the things I didn't realize is that I can consciously create ways of being in the world and commit to ways of being in the world. And I hadn't seen that. And this whole event that's happening in May next year is an event about being. And as I've explored this kind of space for the last few years, it's had a remarkable impact, not just on me, but it's having a global impact. You know, we'll talk more about that today, and I'm excited to share with everyone.
So it's more of a perception of well, it's what creates the perception of the world, right? So it's beyond perception. It's what generates even that perception of the world. And is it something, you know, as you talk about being, is that something that we're born with? Is it something we develop? Is it something we choose into? Like, how do you see that?
Well, everyone's being something at every single moment in time, right? So um, someone might be being judgmental right now, right? Watching this, someone might be um, being open and bringing an amazing listening to get the most out of this masterclass. We're always being something. Really, what I think the power lies in is consciously deciding who we want to be in any given moment, consciously creating a way of being in the world that we'd like to be. And like I said, I didn't even realize that was an option for so much of my life. I didn't realize I could consciously decide to be loving, kind, generous, open-hearted, and so much more. I just thought, you know, I lived kind of as best I could. I did the best that I could. I might try and, you know, be a good person, but I didn't realize how much power I had to really commit and choose to show up in the world in a certain way. And for me, being is just really it's black and white. It's crystal clear. I can't BS it. You know, if I'm being judgmental, I'm being judgmental. I can't be judgmental and loving at the same time,
Has
right?
that, yeah, has that made an impact in your life? Is it something that has shifted your output in the world? You know, I think in terms of me right now, I'm heavy into AI, and I love the idea of putting in information, and it comes from who I'm being, and it creates an output in my world. And along those lines, is that what would you say is the biggest single impact that this has had on your world? This being, this concept of being.
Well, it's not a concept, right?
Yeah.
It just is. It's who I'm being, who anyone's being in at any given time, and has it as an impact? Like hell yeah. Um, uh, uh, what I can see create that I can create in the world, what I see I have to offer, has increased, you know, 1,000-fold, 10,000-fold, like beyond that. Um, you know that it's it's noticed by absolutely everyone, from my wife to my parents to my clients. I mean, it's so fundamental. I've been around personal development for like 21, 22 years. And I would say, as I've explored this journey in depth over the last year or two, it's had the most impact of anything I've ever done. I mean, it's quite remarkable. I never thought I would come across something that would have that kind of impact, both on me and the work that I do. So it's yeah, it's not a small shift.
You say come across it. How did you come across this? So it sounds like it wasn't there before, this
Well,
concept.
I
Yeah.
had an idea of being as a concept through my coach Steve Chandler, who I used to work with. And you know, we would talk about there's what you do and then there's who you be. But I didn't really understand it until a couple of years ago, December 2021, when I started to work with Steve Hardison, also known as the Ultimate Coach. Um, I think people may be aware of that, and his branding is in the logo that I can see over there. And there was a book that was written about him, but it's not actually written about him. It's a book about being, which is, what he wanted ultimately. But yeah, working with him, and he's really taken a stand for being in the world. I started to see stuff that I just had no clue about, I had no idea about, and I'm still working with him now. He's my current coach. I fly to Phoenix, Arizona, several times a year to be with him because he coaches in person, and I'm based in the UK. It's a massive commitment for me to do that, both financially, energy wise, and time wise. But every time I spend time with him, my understanding of being expands, and my state of being grows. Who I'm being in the world shifts and changes in phenomenal ways. And I'm realizing that I'm just scratching the surface of what being really is.
Yeah, I love this. And the commitment is a demonstration of your being flying from the UK to meet with your coach, the financial commitment, the time commitment, the attention commitment, even more valuable than money, things that go beyond the things that money can buy, your time with your family. But it just is a demonstration of who you're being so that you can show up that way. And when we scheduled this class, you wanted to talk specifically about changing a global consciousness around this being. Can you speak to that a little bit? What was your intention there, and why did you choose that as the topic of this masterclass?
Yeah, I mean, it's no, I don't want to say the word embarrassing, but I mean, it was a bit unusual. A year ago, I was in Steve Hardison's coaching office, and he said, "I study world leaders, and you remind me of someone." And he said, "You remind me of Mahatma Gandhi." And I didn't really know how to take it at first. I'll be honest, I didn't like it. I had worked really hard to um, be me and be all of me, and I was like, I don't really want to be compared to another leader. But Steve kept, saying that, and he kept creating me in that way, and he started calling me MG, and there were big boots to fill. And what he said was, the impact that Gandhi had on India, you're going to have on the world. Now that's a huge statement to make. And frankly, I was coming from a place of like, little old me. I can't do that. Um, but I decided to play with it. And so I said to Steve, well, why don't we personalize it a bit more? I'm going to change MG to modern Gandhi, and therefore I can make it my own, and put my own stamp on it. And this year, I started to really, explore the idea of, if I was to be that, because it seemed crazy to me, like that was kind of beyond anything I had imagined. But I was like, if I was to really embody what modern Gandhi would be, how would I have to be in the world? What would need to change? And I had a bunch of things that came forward. So one of them was my physical health. Now I used to exercise. I was in okay shape, but my diet and nutrition were terrible. Um, and I had put that off for so many years. I got on top of that. I lost about 12 and a bit kgs. I've got down to a very lean state, and now I'm kind of reversing out of that very mindfully, and I've completely shifted how I eat, and it shifted how I look. I've never looked as good as I look. I've never been as strong as I've been. I was in the gym this morning, and three different people gave me a compliment either on how I look or my strength. Um, that didn't used to happen to me before. That's shifted. Um, and then in relationship with my wife, and I've got to really acknowledge my wife here. Everything that I'm creating in the world, I can't do it on my own. For me to fly out to the States, typically I go out for 10 days at a time. My wife works. She has a fantastic job. She's super smart. There's a big commitment, not just from me, and thank you for acknowledging me for my commitment, but I have to acknowledge my wife that she doesn't support me. Um, I don't get to go out to the States and work with my coach. So my wife is very supportive. She's fully behind me, and I've had to really think about, if I'm being MG, then I've got to be a certain way with my wife that I wasn't being before. And it's not that we had a bad marriage or bad relationship, but there's a different level to that. So as I start shifting in all these ways in my life, it's incredible, because they seem to have nothing to do with global change. And I found myself in September talking. So I run a coaching school, and I found myself, I had no idea I was going to say this. And I stand at the front of the coaching school, day one of this 6-month program, and I say, we're not here to grow your coaching practice, and your coaching practice will grow. We're not here to make you a better coach, and you'll be a better coach. We are here to change the consciousness of the planet through changing the industry of coaching. And I could feel it. It was like these words were being spoken through me. And as soon as I said it, like, it felt absolutely right. I had no idea how it was going to happen. And I realized, oh, this is me being MG. This is me having that impact that Steve was saying that I'll have on the world, that Gandhi had on India. And then over the last 2 months, just there's been kind of more meat on the bones. It started to become clearer and clearer how that's going to happen, and how my job is to facilitate people waking up to the fact that they can also be global change makers and leaders, and the power and potential they have, which is phenomenal. And it's I'm just so clear that this is going to happen.
I want to ask you, there's a distinction here between putting on a mask, the modern Gandhi mask of, I'm going to pretend to be this versus being that. Can you create a
Mm.
distinction there of what you mean between this idea of masking or donning or putting on the facade of something versus actually being that and having that express in your world? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a fake it till you make it thing, right? This isn't just like saying, hey, I'm going to be this person and I don't believe it. This is me having to be that. So whatever that means to me, it's like, for example, there might have been times my wife and I had a disagreement, and in the past I may have had ego about it, and like, oh, I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to give in first. And to me, that's not what modern Gandhi would do, right? Like I said, with the nutrition piece, modern Gandhi wouldn't be the person who overeats like I used to, and stuffs his face full of junk food. Um, I mean, I could keep going on and on and on. There were so many ways that, in my mind, modern Gandhi would be that I wasn't being, and I had to just make a commitment and step into that, um, and enroll other people in that journey too. And people are really catching it. People are seeing it, but they don't see it because I say some nice words or it sounds cool. I've got to walk my talk. So when I say I've got to be it, I've got to walk my talk. Um, and that's kind of where the rubber meets the road.
I'd like to ask you around this. Is there a level of unbecoming in this as well? So you have old patterns that you've established over your life and ways of being that have gotten you to this point. Then you go meet with Steve Hardison and you read this book, The Ultimate Coach, and you have some profound shifts. But you also had programming automations that were plugged in over time, ways of showing up. Was there a level of battling that? Was there something that you had to unbecome, or was it simply stepping fully into the becoming or the being, and the world started to shift immediately? I'm just curious about the process here.
I think they're both one and the same thing, right? Like unbecoming and being. I mean, it goes hand in hand. But of course, there were habits that I had. There were habits and you know ways I would operate in the world that had to change. And I'm not going to say it was it was without effort, like this is some kind of magic pill. There was a journey that I've been on, and I still am on. You know, I'll give you an example. I'm not feeling very well today. I woke up and you know, something's not right in my stomach. And the old me, I had a meeting with my personal trainer in the gym. The old me would have, you know, messaged him, "Hey, I'm not feeling very well. I can't come in today. I'm gonna rest." Um, and now I will say, trust your body. If you're not well and you really are not well, then trust that. But for me, you know, I was well enough to drop my son to nursery and get up. I didn't feel 100%, and so I went into the gym and I told my trainer, I was like, "Look, I'm not 100%. Let's just see how we go." And and by the end of the session, I felt great. You know, I felt really good. I hit personal best in the gym again. My trainer always laughs. He goes, "Every day when you're either when you're jet lagged or you're tired or something," he goes, you know, you still do well." And that is, you know, a shift in how I operate in my self-talk. Um, and then afterwards, you know, again, I'm not saying like, "Oh, you know, everything's fine." I'm not feeling great, and in my head, I'm committed to being here, and not only being here, but I was like, "I'm committed to being here and making this the best masterclass, best talk, best webinar that I've ever done." Right? And there's a commitment that I didn't have before, and it then becomes a habit. It becomes a way of being the more I step into that and do that, just like it is in the gym,
Mm.
right? And like people are asking me, "Hey, you know, they see some of my photos online, they've seen some of the body transformation, and they're like, so what do you do?" You know, they're looking for the doing. They're looking for like, what did you train? What did this? What did that? And I'm like, it's a being shift. My shift in how I look shifted. I think it's the 17th of May 2024, because that's the day I signed up to this program, but it's a day that I made a commitment to shift. And along the way, there've been a bunch of times where I could have quit or something happened, like I started getting some injuries, or you know, I would fall off the bandwagon with the nutrition for a couple of days. And every single time I would recognize, oh, there's been a time with me in the past where this a similar sort of thing has happened and I've quit. And so for me, it was like, no, the being shifted. I was committed to having see this process through, whatever it took. You know, I was working with an online trainer at the start of this program, and I was getting too many injuries. It wasn't working, so I found a personal trainer in the gym who really understood my injuries. Now, it was a significant cost. It's, you know, over £100 a week I pay train with this guy 3 times a week. But I was just committed. I was just like, no, this is going to change. Like whatever it takes, I'm going to do it. Whatever it takes. There's no not doing this. But that comes from who I was being, that commitment. And
So
it's the
the
same with this shift in global consciousness. It's the same with everything I'm up to now. There's a different way of me operating in the world, and that's real strong commitment to be this uh, new person and ultimately be someone that I look up to, because I didn't in the quiet moments of my mind, I wasn't someone I looked up to. Me knowing me 2 years ago, I had all these judgments on myself, all these things I didn't like about myself, all these things I was like, that's not that person would be a role model. What's shifted now is I'm now being someone who I can definitely see would be a role model to my son or a role model to the younger me.
Yeah, I like when you talk about commitment. Steve Chandler taught, you know, that what you do is what you're committed to. It's pretty simple. If you're doing it, you're committed to it. And being goes beyond that. The being creates the commitment. I remember Townsend Wardlaw talking about the distinction of integrity. That integrity is the delta between what you say you do and what shows up in the world. And it's just the measurement between them. So you can see how committed you are by that integrity delta. And when it comes to this way of being, it trumps doing, because you might be being a certain way. It's such a strange language, right? To be a certain way and then find out that your doing doesn't align with that being, like the injuries you mentioned. The coach that you had didn't align with the being. And so you had to find another way of doing. And so really when you know your being, then you find the doings that align with that. Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah, so I worked with a company, and I said, how quickly could I get to basically having a six pack? That was one of the things I wanted to do, and they're like, the people do it within 5 to 6 months. So, if they really commit to the process, it can take longer. But if you really commit, so I was like, great, I'm in 5 to 6 months. I'm going to do it, and so I did it in that time, and I got the six pack. But what I noticed is there are a number of people who go through this journey, and there's several companies who do this, and then they bounce back. They just go back to how they were before, or even the person who recommended this particular company to me went, "Oh, it's not sustainable. I did it once. I wanted to have a six pack once, but it's not sustainable." And for me, because it was coming from who I was being, there was a bigger reason. It wasn't just to look good. It was a fundamental shift in how I eat and how I train, and how I show up in the world. And so I was like, right, I want to be the top few percentage of people that of my age are in this shape and strength and health. But then also now, of all the people that have done this kind of thing, I want to be in the top 1% of those to actually keep it going, to actually be someone who's like, "Oh, okay, it's not like I've done it now. Now I'm going to go back to," and people even said this, "Are you going to eat normally now?" As if like, that's not like,
Right.
no.
When are you
And
gonna
and
fall
funny,
back, right? That's what people
right.
wonder. Yeah.
And it's funny, I've been away for a few days. I'm delivering my school in London. I couldn't weigh and cook my food, so I was eating as well as I could, but it's not the same. And I came back, and I think that's part of the reason I'm not feeling very well, right? And I'm kind of tapping into that inner wisdom of like, hey, this way I'm being now, this is just way better for you. Why would you go back, to the way that I used to be? And it's not easy, but it's not as hard as I might think. It's way better and more satisfying eating the way that I've been eating than it is just kind of pigging out and eating, junk like I used to. And that's just a metaphor for everything, right? It's way better for me to be more loving and kind and gracious with my wife than the old way I used to operate. I get more from that. I get a better wife. I get a better marriage,
Yeah.
right? One way of being that has shifted is, and I wrote a post about this in the Ultimate Coach Facebook group, say about acknowledgements. I actively find ways to acknowledge people. The way I used to be was like, I don't have time, and oh yeah, it'd be a nice thing to do. But I'm finding as I do that, I get so much out of it. When I acknowledge people, like I had great customer service in London. There was a few people who really stood out. I made sure I took, and it didn't take me ages, but it took me a little bit of time to make sure this person knew, to make sure their boss knew, to make sure their boss's boss knew. And I'm creating that. And I didn't do it for this, but I got so much stuff like comped at this hotel,
Mm.
right? I got so much stuff like way more given back to me, way more than I could have ever imagined. And that's not the reason I did it, but I had a totally different experience of being at this hotel, which I've stayed at, several times before. It was a different experience now. And I'm going back there, I'm gonna have a different experience. I'm creating relationships in ways that I've never done. And this was the same in Spain. I went to Spain 3 weeks ago. I was asked to speak out there, and I'd been there in 2019. And when I went there in 2019, I'm there, I have a nice experience, I come back. This time I go, by the time I've left, I've only been there 3 or 4 days. I'm friends with the local curry house, right? I'm friends with the baker. I'm friends with the local chocolate shop. Like I've gone in and met people and I've connected with them. I'm friends with the people at the coffee house. I leave the restaurant. I went to the Indian restaurant 3 days in a row. It was an amazing restaurant. Like I love Indian food, and it's hard to get good Indian food, and you travel sometimes. And this place was as good as Indian food I've ever eaten in my life. So I went there one day, so good. I went, but the next day with a bigger group, so good. The final day, there were two groups of people going to two different restaurants. I'm like, I'm going here. There's 50 of us, and we'd already included a tip. Well, it was so good and the staff was so great and they were doing so much for us. I just went around the table and I was like, does anyone feel like chipping in a little bit extra for a tip? These waiters work so hard. It's not a lot of money for us. It's going to be huge for them, and there's no obligation. Well, I gathered 120 euros, right? Our original tip, and they tip differently in Europe, was about 50 euros. So we like just totally exceeded it. And I didn't do it for any reason. I was just doing it from my heart, for, for these people who'd really been serving us. And I go up to the main guy and I go like, this is for your staff. Like, really just want to thank you for everything you've done for us. And he was just like blown away. And he's like, no, don't give it to me, give it to the staff. And as I'm leaving, he shakes my hand and he goes, you, sir, are a great man. What you've done for our staff today, they won't forget this. This is amazing. Now, I'm not telling you this story to like big myself up. I'm like, that sort of stuff didn't happen to me, right? Because I was being different. And the people who, probably been to that restaurant, that doesn't happen to them, right? But as
Yeah.
I shift this way of operating and look for ways to be who I create myself to be every single day, crazy stuff like this is happening all the time,
I like
right?
this.
And I'm just
Yeah.
noticing it.
Steve Hardison called me driving back from California about 2 years ago, and he says, I'm going to create a miracle. And I said, cool, I'd love to hear about it. So he hangs up and he calls back. And he says, you won't believe what just happened. I got a flat tire. And it was the most exciting thing in the world for him. He said, watch what happens. And he went to work creating what he calls the tow truck driver distinction, right? This idea that a situation that for many people would have been upsetting or frustrating, or they would have turned into victimness. He decided he was going to play with it, have just a crazy amount of fun with it. And like you, went to work creating this experience from his way of being. And there's a video on it that people can watch about that tow truck driver distinction. And in a way, that's what you're describing here is it's not so much about what's happening in the environments, who I want to be and have that express into the environment. So I remember Rich Litvin saying something along the lines of vision is not where you're going, it's what's coming from you, right? And in a way, this global consciousness that you're looking at creating, I'd love to hear some ideas of how people can start to step into this, or how you envision this. What is your vision around this global consciousness? How does this come to be?
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Great question. And, I didn't even know how that was going to come to be when I first said this in September, but I kept speaking it, and we create through our language all the time, right? And so I start speaking it and I start enrolling people and I say, just, be on the journey with me. And hey, Steve, I think Steve is watching us. And then I start to realize, as I'm seeing the greatness in myself, I'm seeing it in other people. As I shift who I'm being in the world, and I realize, wow, there's way, way, way more that I can achieve in the world and create in the world than I ever thought possible. I start seeing it in other people. Now, this isn't just clients, this isn't just about me being a coach. It's like I see it in everyone. And so I start speaking it to them. I start speaking what I see as possible for them. And then it dawns on me, I know a bunch of people that if they really accessed and harnessed their state of being, they really accessed and harnessed their true potential, what they have available to them. I know a bunch of people that on their own could change the consciousness of the planet. Like a bunch of people, right? In business, in small business, in the music industry. And just like me, they didn't realize it and they were playing smaller than they might have been. Well, now I start speaking that to them. Some of them are my clients and I'll support them. And some of them are not my clients. And some of them are like, hey, you're not a client of mine. I don't care if you pay me a penny, but if I can support you, let me know, because my vision is to change the consciousness of the planet. So anything I could do to support you creating the shift that you can create, let me know. I had that conversation today with a guy who's a former client and a plastic surgeon. And, he was telling me how he sees how much shift he can have in the medical world. I'm like, dude, I'm with you. You never pay me a penny. I don't care, but I'm there for you. And I really see that he can have a massive impact in that industry. So I really see it that, there's the power of the individual. This doesn't have to be something where like, oh, now I need to become famous. I need to now get 1 million followers online. I need to kind of become this Tony Robbins character or something else. That's not how this is going to happen. But I'm kind of saying that the revolution will not be televised. People won't see it coming, right? So, and this is true with you too, Nick. You access your state of being. You really access who you really are and the power you've got in the world, which is a mountain without a top. There's always way more for us to create them that we can create than we realize. Just you alone. I mean, your book is incredible, The Giants and the Smalls, and I know you're working on other books. Well, you're going to have ways of being that you don't even realize that are unconscious to you, that are getting in the way of you having a bigger impact in the world through that book or through your work. And that's not a criticism or a judgment. We all have that, right? And so what I'm seeing, part of my role is to help facilitate people get past those blind spots and realize, like, oh, okay, yeah, wow, I can do way more than that. Oh, I could shift here, I could show up in this way. And people see Steve Hardison and they think, oh, he's some kind of strange, in a very positive way, guy who can do things that the rest of us can't do. And he keeps saying over and over again, there's nothing that I do that anyone else can't do.
Isn't that, yeah, I want to hang on to that thought. I don't want to lose what you've got going here, but I want to anchor that in. That's something that Jesus said, anything you see me doing, you can do. It's something Steve Hardison says. It's something you're saying. I remember being at the TBOLIT NFL event here in Salt Lake City years ago. And when Steve grabbed Chris Doris by the shirt, the jersey, he was literally shaking this man into his being. If you could only see you the way I see you, right, then you would wake up and you would shift your consciousness. And I see that in my own world. I don't feel that's a judgment of where I'm at, but it's true. There are things that are unconscious or non-conscious that get in the way of our being, and we allow them. And sometimes you need that person like Steve did with you to say, you're like Mahatma Gandhi. And you're like, no, I'm like the modern Gandhi. I mean, you woke up to it. Either way, it didn't matter, but you had this awakening to, holy crap, I could do that. And it sounds like that's what you're doing with other people, is waking them up to, if you could just see you the way I see you, you would never go back to playing small again, right? Is there a continuation to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. And I want to go beyond that as a concept. I mean, real time, the things that I find that people are looking to create now, I'm like, that's done. I mean, you step into who you could really be in the world, it's done, right? Whether it's like someone wanting to grow their coaching practice, or someone wanting to, I don't know, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. I mean, yes, I'm working with coaches, but this isn't for coaches. This is for everyone. Um, you know, we can have our cake and eat it, right? We have access to, the same creative energy that created the universe. We are the universe. So people wake up to that, and I'm just talking for me. What I thought was just not possible. And I spoke to Steve in our first coaching session. Hey, I'd like to create this, and I said something, and I said a number in my business that was like so big, that was like, even if I spent a decade, I don't think I would reach this. It was just something that was crazy to me. And now that just looks like nothing. And I'm not saying that because I really care about the numbers. And it's not that I don't care about the numbers, but this is so much bigger than that. Like, this is a shift in global consciousness. And there's levels to that. Someone just commented that, it's already happening. Yeah, it's already happening. Right. And there's levels to it, and I can see more and more clearly that there's levels of shift that I can help facilitate that go way, way, way beyond. I mean, even when I had the thought about changing the coaching industry, the first thought was like, I can't do that. There's all these other people, and there's people who've been doing this work longer than I have, and who me? And then I just was like, well, why not me? And that came from a shift in how I see myself, my self-talk. And a lot of that is grounded in me having something called a document that I created with Steve Hardison, where it's more than a process. So I don't want to just call it a process, but there is a process I went through with him. But it was who he was being, and then who I was being, and we looked at all the negative judgments I had on myself, and we cleansed them. We ran a process of self-forgiveness on them. And then I created new statements. I created this document that I speak every single day, twice a day. And it's, you can't see, it's down over here in my office. And you know, it's framed, and like that's been a game changer for me, right? I am my document, and every day I find new ways to be it even deeper. Um, and that anchors me. And the more I step into that, like in a way, the only thing I need to do is step into being my document every single day, and the impact I have in the world will be global.
Can we slow down with the document a little bit? Because there's a declaration inside of that document. Some people watching this video may not know what you're talking about. Right. So you say a document, you slow down with these judgments that you have, and you clear those judgments, and then you rewrite your truths, and you put them into a document, and you read it twice a day. But what is the power of that? Why is that so essential and foundational to everything that you're creating?
Because that's the conscious creation of, you know, and expanding my state of being. It all flows from that, right? So, you know, I've got it here, and there are about 50 statements or something that I have that I declare, and they all start with I am. But I'll give you an example. The first line in my document is I am loved and I am loving, right? I plant that seed every single day that I'm loved and I'm loving. And it's not an affirmation. It's seeing that that is actually true, and one, looking for, you know, then I awaken to look for evidence of that, and I see it everywhere. And then secondly, it's a commitment to be that. So if I'm loved and I'm loving, well, there's certain ways of being that are not loving that I used to be like. Well, now I'm making a commitment that when I catch that, right, I forgive myself, and then I recommit to being loving. So if I'm not being loving with my wife, then I catch it, I forgive myself, and then I come back to being loving with my wife. If I'm not being loving with my neighbor, right, as soon as I catch that, I forgive myself, and then I commit to be that. And I got this set of these statements everywhere, and they've
Are
they've
there
come from me not believing that about myself,
are there
right?
times you're not it then? You're not your document. There are
Every single
times when
day,
you're okay. And when you're
every
not
single
that,
day.
you've got a process for returning to it.
Yeah, and it's not about a process. So you
Okay.
could say the process is I forgive myself for judging myself that I was not loving or something, and then I return back to who I declare myself to be. But it's beyond that. I was talking to Steve about this. Sometimes I don't even need to do that. It's not about the process. It's fundamentally me loving myself. That's what this is about. Like, it just doesn't make sense to judge myself anymore. One of the big things that's shifted for me is I'm actually nice to myself. I'm actually loving myself. I'm actually not as mean or horrible. And so many people know this, that you know, we say if you spoke to other people the way you speak to yourself, you wouldn't have any friends. Well, that's shifted for me. I don't speak really horribly to myself anymore. And when I do, it's just short lived. I shortcut it, and I'm like, no, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm committed to being what I declare myself to be. And that's it. Like, I'm declaring myself to be this, and I'm committed to being that. I know every single day there's going to be, if someone audited me, there's going to be at least one thing, and probably several things every single day, that I'm not who I declare myself to be. It's not about being perfect, right? And it's not about judging myself when I'm not. It's just like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not there. Catch it, return to it.
It reminds me of airlines. You know, they know where they're going, the destination, and during the flight, they have all these auto corrections, right? Little micro adjustments back to the point of or trajectory that's going to get them to the destination. And that's what it sounds like to me, is that there will be times that you are not your document. There will be times that you're not being the being that you're declaring in the world. And instead of judging yourself for it, you're just getting back on track. You're like, okay, I'm not doing that. So you're just back on track. Does that sound accurate?
100%, you know,
Mm.
and it's not about get out of jail card. I'm committed to being my document. And I'm just finding it's a mountain without a top. I'm just finding other ways to be that, other ways to be that, other ways to be that. So, you know, I could pick any line of my document, right? And then that day say, okay, I'm going to commit to really being more of this today. And I've got so many examples over the last year where I've done that. You know, one of the things I had was I was scared of spiders. And I knew in my heart, to get over that fear, man, I need to hold a tarantula one day. And I was just like, there is no effing way that I'm going to do that. It was such a big fear. And then the opportunity came. A few months after I created my document, we went to a kids' party, and it was called a petting party. I didn't realize these things existed. And, my son was invited to it, my wife and I were invited to it, and they had different pets, different animals there, including a snake, and I was also scared of snakes, but a tarantula. And I was like, all right. And as I'm driving down, and it's like an hour and a bit journey, I'm just saying my document over and over and over again, over and over. My wife and my son are sleeping in the car. I'm just saying my document, saying my document. And when I get there, I'm not saying the fear went, but I was like, all right, I'm gonna hold this tarantula. And when I held it, in the end, when I held it, I was like, this is beautiful. I even started considering getting one as a pet. It was such a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that shifted me. Now, having held that tarantula, like, it shifted that fear. Now, one of my statements is, I'm one of the bravest people I know. So on one level, I can see how that was true before all of this, because I've done some things that are pretty brave, like leaving my corporate career without a safety net and doing certain things. I'm like, that's pretty true. I've done some stuff, and I can commit to being that. Now, where are opportunities to be that? Oh, okay, here's an opportunity to hold this tarantula and a snake, or I'm going to do that,
Huh.
right?
Yeah. I'm just making this connection here, and it's just so beautiful. Is it has nothing to do with emotions. And what you're hitting on is those sensations that you feel, that's natural. That's stuff that we all go through. But being is so far beyond that. It's being your word, it's being your commitment regardless of the emotions. You could be your emotions, and that would be a way of being, right? You could have been afraid of that spider and not done anything about it, and that would have been your way of being. You would have been more the feelings than your commitment to overcome that fear. And so it goes beyond emotion. I think that's so important because people think they need to feel good to do good. They think they need to be rid of anger and frustration and sadness and all these things that we go through as humans. And it has nothing to do with that. Is that accurate? And can you speak more to that?
We all know this to a certain level, right? I mean, how many times, anyone that's got a job, have you woken up in the morning and not felt like going to work? But you go, you don't go, oh, because I don't feel like going, therefore I'm not going to go in. Or we've had the experience of, I don't feel like working out today, and then you work out and it feels pretty good. Our feelings are a really bad predictor of how we're going to feel in the future. They're really bad future predictor. We all have some experience of this, and it's so, being someone that relies on my feelings, and there were areas of my life where I did, where I would rely on my feelings to decide or dictate what I was going to eat and how much I was going to eat and where I was going to eat. It's not good, like. And since changing this, there's sometimes like, oh, maybe I'll start eating the stuff I used to eat, and then I feel terrible. It's not been good, right? And
Yeah.
we all know, like, eat this. Like, Steve Hardison told me once, people ask him, the guy's 69 years old, he looks incredible for his age, and that's even more crazy, the fact that he's diabetic. And he said, people ask him, hey, what do you do, man? Like, in the gym, what do you do? How come you look like this? And he goes, it's not rocket science, right? Do this, don't do that. Eat this, don't eat that. And he said this to me on, I think, like, our first coaching session. And I was like, it really is that simple. There's no,
It,
like,
it just nails it,
magic
right?
thing.
Yeah. This activity is going to create this outcome. Do this, you're going to get that.
Yeah.
And it's proven. Um, this is also powerful. It really ties into what you're demonstrating is your way of being is a demonstration of what you're enrolling the world into. This global commitment, this global consciousness, you're being that now so that you can express that into the world as a global consciousness. You're being a demonstration, an enrollment, so to speak, of what being is. So when people come to you and they say, hey, what's being? You don't have to describe it as a concept. You can show yourself as an example. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah. I mean, I said this to Steve. I said, I'm seeing that if I'm, and I say only, right? But it's not only, but if the only thing I do is commit to being my document more and more each day and really step into that, and then just do everything that I was doing before, but from this place of being, the consciousness of the planet will change. I don't need to go and do a bunch of stuff, because it looked like that originally, like, oh, we'll have to be flying around the world and doing this and doing that and whatever. And then it dawned on me, no, if being is all that we're saying it's cracked up to be, if being is really that transformational, that's all that I need to shift. I need to shift my being, and that's what's happening. I'm shifting my being, and my conversations are different. My interactions with people are different. The impact I'm having is different, just everywhere that I'm going, right? Like in the gym, it never happened to me that people would shake my hand and congratulate. Like that's just never happened. Or going to a hotel and I'll give you an example. So one of the things that I commit to being is acknowledging people. Well, through my acknowledging of this couple of staff members who did a great job for us, I end up meeting the general manager of this hotel, and he gives me his card. And he said, next time you're in London, let's have a meeting. I'd love to know what you're up to in the world, and let's see how I can support you. Right? I've tried to get hold of this guy before. I couldn't get past his gatekeeper. Now, through who I'm being, in terms of acknowledging his team and whatever, I got his card directly. Let's talk. Let's meet. Right? And
Yeah.
people are going to go, oh, you're lucky, or you're in the right place at the right time, or someone's not. It's not. It's not someone's done something for me. Right? It's like, oh, I shift my being and I have different interactions.
Immediately. Yeah.
Immediately it starts changing. And it's
I
right in front of us all the time.
It's such a beautiful thing. It's so simple, right? So simple, but not necessarily easy. It's something that you practice. It's something that you're committed to. You wake up and you might work on your entire declaration statement for that day, or you might work on one item from it. But that declaration is a commitment of being that thing that you wrote on that sheet of paper. And it goes beyond that. It assimilates and becomes who you are. And I would wonder, as we've had this conversation, is there a question around being you wish somebody would have asked you or would ask you? Is there something you would want to really speak to around being?
Well, I'll tell you what, a question that I do get asked from some people is like, can this really work for me in this situation? And it might be someone who's like, but I'm in debt to this degree, right? Or I'm struggling with X or Y, or, hey, I'm older than you. Could I have the same shift in my body? And the answer to me, like, my answer is always yeah. I've never come across something that's had the impact that this work has had, like, ever. And when I'm talking to, some people listening to this are going to be coaches or people who are doing this work with others. I'm like, you wanna see what we've got here. You want to see this technology. It's not technology, but let's just call it that. You want to see what this technology of being is. You want to see what we have access to. It's unbelievable, and no one realizes. Even within our community, people don't realize what we've got here. And I'm like, oh my God, if people knew how powerful this is, if they knew what was available to them in their marriages, in their relationships, in their businesses, in their bodies, I mean, literally everywhere, with their finances, it's unbelievable, right? It really, really is. And, we've got such, shout out to everyone involved in the being movement, Eric Lofholm, Elisa, there is so much stuff available at no cost, right? You buy a book for 10, 20 pounds, 20 euros, whatever, $20, and then you get access to a free Facebook group with a ton of stuff in it for free that you can revel in and enjoy and have some of the biggest shifts in your life that you've ever had. And even this event, like, I'm not getting paid to speak there. Gary Muller's not getting paid to speak there. All these people that are coming in and speaking, they're not getting paid to speak there. And we could, and we've got other stuff going on in the world, right? And all the money is going to charity, to an incredible charity, right? So if people woke up, like, whatever price you buy a ticket at, and there's a few different price points, like, if you paid 10 times that much, it would literally be the bargain of the century. If you showed up and had ears to really listen to what's being shared, I'm not kidding you. Right? I was fortunate enough to be at the London event last year, which was a one-day event. This is a 2 day. But I was at the one-day event, and I sat there, and some of the things I heard and that impacted me from that day are still benefiting me today. I got my money's worth and then some, and I was helping organize it, and I bought a ticket, right? It was incredible. It was really, really the best investment. And so, we're not trying to make money for people. We're certainly for me, I'm like, I want to enroll you in like, hey, your life can get better. And I say this because my life wasn't good. Some people who know me or read my book or sometimes they'll hear some of the stories I tell. For me to be who I'm being today is insane. I mean, literally, it's insane. The guy that I was, how insecure I was, bullied at school, unpopular, just low self-esteem. There was a point in my life where I thought I was worse than shoe under someone's foot. And for me to go from being that guy to being someone now who's talking about changing the consciousness of the planet, that's insane, right? And so I often see people who are like, oh, well, this worked for me. I'm like, you're like 100 steps ahead of where I started from, right? So please just know that you just bring your listening, you just bring openness, and you come to the event, like it will benefit you. And you know what? If you can't, at least use the group, at least use the free stuff that's available. I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you feel something that's going on here, right? And look at the shifts and impacts that are happening for me or for other people. And I try and share it in real time. When something's shifting, I'm sharing it in the Facebook group, not because I'm trying to get clients or I'm trying to do anything. My coaching practice has been full ever since I started working with Steve Hardison. I'm sharing it because I get so much from helping someone else. It just nourishes me. This is the reason I became a coach, that it's not just for me. I want other people to get the benefit I'm getting, right? And a percentage of that will come back to me anyway. It makes good business sense, but that's not why I'm doing it. I want to make the world a better place. You call me a, dreamer, call me naive. I don't care. But I want people to benefit. If I get something good, if something helps me, why wouldn't I want to share that with other people? Why on earth would I not want to do that? So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And I'm willing to be judged for that. I'm willing to someone say it's a cult or you're evangelizing, because I know it isn't. I'm just so, so, so keen for people to get some of the shift that's available to them that they don't realize.
Yeah. I love the way you say, it's where I'm coming from. It's just such a clear statement of who you're being, right? It's where I'm coming from. I know where I'm coming from. I know what's coming from me. And it's all an expression of that. And like you say, we live in a limitless universe. We have limitless possibility around us. So the only thing that could transform that would be our ability to see it. And the way of being is the way to shift your way of seeing it, because the universe is always there. It hasn't changed. I think of Byron Katie's quote that says that, if we think the problem's out there, then there's no hope, that we're consistently suffering in paradise, and paradise never changes, but our being does, our way of seeing it does. And I think that's what you're demonstrating today, is that it really comes back to us deciding, who am I going to be in this world, not as a mask or a facade, but who am I committed to create myself as, to create my world. Is there more to add to this as we come to the end of this session?
Well, before I finish, I just want to acknowledge a few people, right? I really want to acknowledge first my coach, Steve Hardison. I'm here because of the work we've done together, and it's, he'll always say the power's in the listener. So it's a co-creation. It's he and I doing that together. And I love everything we do. I'm so grateful for him and the impact he's had on my life. I love you, Steve. Thank you so, so much for everything. I want to acknowledge everyone in the being movement and all the time and effort and energy they put into this stuff. I mean, it's phenomenal. Everyone who's organizing this event and putting their time, effort, and energy, Matt Smith, Fiona Ross, Rose Latham, yourself. I mean, so many people, all the speakers that many of them are flying in and giving their time. I mean, if you really stop to think about it, just the fact that you are listening to this is a result of hours and hours and hours of commitment from a bunch of people that don't even know you. If that isn't evidence, right, that the universe is a loving place and wants you to succeed, I don't know what it is. And finally, again, I said it before, but I just want to say it once again. I want to shout out to my family. The most important thing for me is my wife and my son, and my extended family. I love them all, and I'm very, very, very blessed man. I'm very, very blessed to have the people in my life that I do. And you know, I want people to know that it's not a one-man show. I've got a beautiful support network.
I think it's beautiful. I just appreciate so much what you've taught today, the fresh view on being and what it truly means to be, and how your way of being is going to express in others an example of how to be for themselves. And I mean, if you can put yourself in front of the right people, or not even the right people, but people who can have influence in the world, their way of being could have influence, and it wouldn't benefit you in any way other than they're creating the impact that you have in mind. And so I think that's a beautiful dream and vision. And I think it's very reachable. And the idea of a revolution that wasn't televised is another powerful statement that they won't even know it's happening. And that's what we're about here, is creating a revolution of being, of who you are and who you think you are, and showing up in the world powerfully. And is there anything else as we wrap up that you wanted to share today?
All I wanted to say is every single person that's watching this, every single person, I don't care what's happening in your life, where you are, we've never met, we might know each other, just know that I love you, really. And I am 100% supportive of you having a better life and stepping into your state of being. I really believe a rising tide lifts all boats. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. For those that are watching, thank you for being a part of this. Tune in for the next Being Masterclass that'll be coming up, and tune into the group. If you're not a part of the TUB group, make sure you go sign up there, but get your tickets, most importantly. It's going to a good cause. It's going to the Birmingham Children's Hospital, and every dollar is going to all the proceeds anyway are going to charity. So thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for your comments. And we will see you in the next video. Make it a giant day.